Since Harold and the Meg have recently gone to Nigeria on a fake tour, one that's not official in any way, shape, or form, and is completely private, a vacation, I thought it would be a great time to take a look back at the last time they were in Africa together, which was for an official, actual, real royal tour. They went to South Africa together to represent the Queen shortly after Archie was born. It was their second official tour and their last. Harry and Meghan completely ruined this South Africa tour. And it's a really important part of their story when it comes to their interactions with the royal family and the press and themselves as individuals. It showed a lot of character, let's put it that way. Now, quick side note before we begin, I did have to redo this intro, so you will see a wardrobe change. Hi everybody, I'm Beebs Kelley. Thank you for joining me for another video. This week we're doing a 3-part special on Harry and Meghan's South Africa trip. This royal tour was seen by the royal staff, PR people, royal watchers, and many of the public as an opportunity for the Sussexes to redeem themselves in the view of public opinion, because it was immediately following all this weird behavior surrounding Prince Archie's birth. At the time, Harry and Meghan had a few blunders, lots of sort of hypocritical behavior leading up to this trip. We're going to get into all of that and why this trip was seen as so important to be seen as a success and to make a success. It's safe to say everybody in terms of the royal staff and their team was very dedicated to making this trip to South Africa a success and to make it good and be seen as good. And it's also safe to say that Harry and Meghan blew all those efforts up. Upon the conclusion of the trip, they unleashed a huge amount of drama, and they have not stopped the drama train since. It was the location of Meghan's biggest red flag up to that point, her "nobody's asked if I'm okay" moment in the Bradby interview. This was the moment where people who had been on the fence about Meghan, or many of her supporters, went, hold on, that's bad person territory right there. And there was a huge plummet to Harry and Meghan's popularity immediately following this trip. So it's a really important point in their history and the Sussex saga. It was absolutely, astonishingly terrible. This is the point where I said there's no excuses for the things that they are doing. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the upcoming episodes, finishing with a fashion edition looking at all her outfits from the trip on Friday. So at the time of this tour, I was noticing her prickly behavior, and at first, in the lead up, the first portion of the trip, I was very much so looking at her attitude and her actions and giving excuses for them, thinking that this season of life that she was in with a brand new infant, her first child there that she was caring for, some nights are still sleepless. I think Archie was like 5 months old around this time. Some days you genuinely just need to stay home and focus on the basics. So something like a royal tour, that's a really big deal and you can't really call out sick that day. I was sympathizing with how difficult that must have been. It's impossible to ignore the fact that Harry and Meghan had somewhere between 13 and 16 staff with them and had way more help than most people. Let's just say it's not like they were having to do laundry the night before or wash all their bottles all by themselves and things like that. They had maids, they had housekeepers, they had private chefs, they had people cooking their meals and getting their groceries and all the rest. Since the South Africa tour was such a huge turning point for Meghan and Harry and their relationship with the press, the royal family, and the public, and for myself, where the most glaring red flag had occurred up to that point, there was a lot that happened on this significant trip and after. But let's take a look at the itinerary itself. On the first day that they arrived, they each gave a speech in Cape Town. She wore this black dress and gave the speech on top of a tree stump, and some people call this the DNA dress. We'll be taking a look at that in the upcoming fashion edition. And later that day, she changed into this blue dress. There was a little bit of a meet and greet here. The following day, September 24, they held a joint event where she was wearing this jean jacket and black jeans. And later that day for Heritage Day, Meghan wore this olive dress and nude flats and this traditional headscarf to visit the oldest mosque in South Africa. Later that evening, in this terrible striped dress, the couple attended a reception for young people, community, and civil society leaders at the residence of the British High Commissioner. On September 25, day 3 of the tour, they met with Desmond Tutu and brought Archie along. Meghan called Archie an old soul at this event, which was pretty cringy and didn't really go over very well in the press. And then she changed into this black jumpsuit for an entrepreneurship talk with women, and then went to the Mothers to Mothers charity where she had the moms sit on the floor, which was a social blunder. Culturally, in that area of the world, it is apparently not acceptable to sit on the floor when you're dressed up like this. So it was really awkward, and clearly she did not read the brief she had been given on cultural norms in the area, which clearly stated that sitting on the floor is not the thing to do in a setting like this. Then on September 26th, they split ways. Meghan stayed with Archie there while Prince Harry went to Botswana. Then on the 27th and 28th, he had an event with the Halo Trust and visited Angola. On the 29th, he was in Malawi and he attended some events, one of which was a youth empowerment event, and Meg Skyped in, which was pretty weird if you think about it. This was pre-COVID times, so for her to Skype in to a meeting, it's like, why didn't you just show up? So there was a lot of headlines around the time, or discussion at that time, that perhaps she was scheduled to go with him to this event and to be with him throughout the whole trip, but had a change of plans where she then stayed put while he went and did these events on his own, because it was really weird to Skype in the way that she did. And she used part of the time in that meeting to talk about how she missed Harry, which again, super weird. Why are you doing that? And then on October 1st, Meghan arrived to a round table discussion in Johannesburg with the Association of Commonwealth Universities, where she focused her portion of the talk on gender equality and education. And then on the last day of the tour, they reunited on October 2nd. They both gave speeches with themes of standing up for what they believe in, which was not necessarily fitting. Later that day, they showed up late to a reception with the High Commissioner as well. Rumor had it they had been arguing. Now, this last day of the trip was super significant, but we're going to focus on the first portion of the trip in this video. I did confirm while researching this video that all of the headlines and news about the tour itself that were happening in real time were very, very positive. Their speeches were dubbed as powerful every single time. Their visits billed as meaningful, poignant. The press was very much in their favor still at this time. Despite all the rumblings and negative feedback they were getting for their excessive use of private jets all over the place, the baby shower, the weirdness surrounding Archie's birth, all of these things, and even the drama leading up to the trip that Meghan was apparently being super demanding, once this tour got underway, everything seemed well with the press. Obviously, the palace PR team is working overtime to achieve positive outlooks from the press and get the royals in the news for a tour and these organizations featured, because that is the whole point of a royal tour. And that is why a good relationship with the press has been developed rather than a begrudging one. But while Harry and Meghan didn't really seem to appreciate these positive headlines at all, because the last moment of this trip, the last thing that the press pack heard was when on the plane ride home, it's tradition or typical that the royals, the team, so to speak, comes back to speak with the press members in a more off-the-record sort of a situation, sort of just chat, share mutual appreciation for joining them on this journey. Because remember, these journalists have families and lives back home and have spent a grueling 10 days following the royals around, getting their pictures and reporting back and writing stories, really sort of working overtime during this trip. While it's a cool opportunity, it's not like they get all the benefits that the royals do of really nice places to stay and really nice meals. The press pack is grinding on these royal tours. And so the whole journey back, they were waiting for Prince Harry and Meghan to come back and have a chat, as per usual on these sorts of trips. And it didn't happen until the very last moment. Meghan made a really weird and awkward comment about how she knew the journalists wanted to get home for Sunday lunch, whatever that meant, Nobody understood it. It was very confusing. Probably another situation in which Harry thought it was a real good joke and confused why nobody laughed. Not funny, not a joke, super weird and awkward. And then Harry says, "Thanks for being here even though you weren't invited," which was super rude. And understandably, the press was taken aback by this. These journalists, like I said, had just been doing their jobs and were sent by their bosses. They were sent by publications to go and report on this. So they technically were invited. And so for Harry to be being mean to them made no sense. And if he was mad at somebody, it should have been at the bosses who sent these journalists, not the journalists themselves. So this happened as the trip was wrapping up, which was odd because the trip was going so well, and from a press perspective everything was really very complimentary, almost too complimentary. So it was clear that the palace had put together the best of their team and PR strategy to make this trip a success. They wanted this to be pushing the reset button for Harry and Meghan and the Sussexes. Harry and Meghan had other ideas. Everyone was hopeful that this would get the couple back in the public's good graces. It was a chance to redeem their image, a fresh start, so to speak. But the first big event of the trip, before that trouble started brewing, was those speeches that they kicked off their events with. The Megs came off decidedly patronizing. Now, reading it now, it's like way off base, and because now we've seen how she's really thrown in the towel on all of this. So, this potential that she had and all of these big, lofty things that she says during this speech are just completely vapid and empty looking at them now. This was during their first visit, the first event of the trip, a visit to the Justice Desk, which is an organization dedicated to supporting children, vulnerable people, and local communities. And this article reads that Meghan Markle addressed the crowd with her empowering and emotional words. She also focused on the support of women and explained to the audience that the work that's being done here is to keep women and children safer, which is needed now more than ever. So the press was reporting on this in a really positive light. But let's take a look at her speech a little more closely. She starts her speech off by talking about how it's a privilege to meet everybody. And she says, "We have just spent some time seeing all the incredible work that the Justice Desk does. And of course, all of you amazing women and the men who are here helping you." And then this part bothers me because it's saying nothing. You are incredible, and what you are doing is so powerful because you're all powerful. What even is that? It's so powerful because you're powerful. It's patronizing. It's silly. It's not good speech writing. This is empty nonsense. Please know that my husband and I have been closely following what you've been experiencing here and as best we can from afar, and that everything that is being done on the ground is making the great change that you not only need, but that you deserve. So once again, there's nothing specific here. She's not mentioning what specifically she's concerned about or been following and paying attention to. She's not mentioning what the actual work is that they're doing and what impacts they're doing. None of that. It's frustrating because then looking back at it, we don't really know the meaning behind the speech at all, which makes it really come across like she just put together something that she thought would sound good. You have welcomed us into this community and have been open and honest with us, both about the dangers women and children face and about how you are addressing them. The rights of women and girls is something that is very close to my heart and the cause I have spent the majority of my life advocating for because I know that when women are empowered, the entire community flourishes. Okay, bringing it back to herself, perhaps we could be critical of that, but also you have welcomed us into this community. How? This was their first event. They had been there for like an hour. I do have to say I feel incredibly humbled to be in the presence of all of you as you stand firm in your core values of respect, dignity, and equality. It's time to pause for a brief moment to thank the sponsor of today's video, Kitsch. These shampoo and conditioner bars eliminate the need for single-use plastics, which I love. They smell amazing, and most importantly, they deliver great results. Now, since these are shampoo and conditioner in bar form, you might be wondering if they work as well as traditional shampoo conditioner, and I can say yes. I was impressed with how much of a lather I got out of the shampoo, and the conditioner left my hair feeling moisturized and nourished. The products are free of phthalates, parabens, silicones, and sulfates. Plus it has this caddy, which allows the bars to dry completely between uses, getting the most out of the product. So if you're ready to give Kitsch products a try, just click the link in the description box below and use my code to get 25% off your first order. They also have a subscription service so you can save even more. They ship all across the US and internationally to over 27 countries. Thanks again to Kitsch for sponsoring today's video. Legendary poet and civil rights activist once said, "Each time a woman stands up for herself without knowing it, possibly without claiming it, she stands up for all women." Now, I know it is not easy and I know it must feel insurmountable at times, but your commitment to what is right gives all of us hope. It must know that what you're doing not only matters, it is vital because you are vital. Once again, it's vital because you're vital. She's saying nothing again. And this whole thing is just saying nothing. She's just saying a bunch of words with no substance. We still don't know what's actually going on based off this speech. There's still nothing specific being indicated here. And this bit about the Maya Angelou quote and whatnot is total foreshadowing to what she ends up doing later in this tour. And then she closes once again referencing herself, I think almost 20 times throughout this speech, which you do want to make a speech personal. You do want to connect to some degree and humanize it. But she does take it a little far because she doesn't have enough substance in there to talk about anything specific that really brings it forward. And it's a lot of things that are just repetitively empty, like it's powerful because you're powerful. It's vital because you're vital. It makes no sense. And just on one personal note, may I just say that while I am here with my husband and as a member of the royal family, I want you to know that for me, I am here with you as a mother, as a wife, as a woman of color, and as your sister. I am here with you and I am here for you. And I thank you so much for showing my husband and I the spirit of Ubuntu. Especially that closing is sort of that very much like I'm here for a better reason and more special. Like my connection to this is more special because she's like, not just as a member of the royal family. It's like special signaling. She's here not as a team player vibe or anything like that, or to represent the queen and the whole of the royal family. She separates herself from that. She separates herself from the royal family and says, I am here as a mother. I am here as your sister. I am here as a woman. So it was a very I-centered speech as usual, and this sort of special signaling at the end is once again some foreshadowing on what was to come. Now, throughout the tour, there were a handful of awkward moments, but she gave another big speech at the end of the trip, which we're going to look at next. At Johannesburg's High Commission, she gave another speech, which this article said was rousing. Once again, still really positive press here. She and Harry were late to join 300 guests to celebrate the UK and South Africa's business and investment relationship. She said, "Over the past 10 days, our family has had emotional moments, poignant moments. We've had spiritual moments. It has been affirming to learn that we're not alone in the things that we believe in and the principles we hold so dear. No matter how different our lives may seem, Africa, you have made us feel part of your community and of our shared community." As I've said before, I firmly believe that all women have a voice. They just need to feel empowered to use it. And people need to feel encouraged to listen. So she's, again, repeating things over and over. She's repeating the same lines she used in the first speech, and she's repeating lines that she's used in previous speeches, like her first engagement with the royals at all, in which she said that exact same line. I'm surprised we don't have the dish soap story. You should know that you have the power to change it. Because whether you're here in South Africa, at home in the UK or the US, or around the world, you actually have the power within you to change things, and that begins with how you connect to others. Ironic, coming from her. Everyone has value and everyone deserves to be heard and respected. And if you live your life in that way, your generation will start to value each other in the ways the rest of us have not yet been able to do so. So this is where it really shows how patronizing she was being, because now we've seen her go forth and attack people over and over and lie and exaggerate and do all these things, meanwhile completely ignoring these humanitarian ideas that she tried to represent and communicate on this trip. While the words are mostly fine, it's a lot of word salad. It's a lot of stuff that sounds important or official or valuable or virtue signaling, but there's no substance behind it. There's no true facts indicating she really has a good understanding of the situation. It's a lot of just empty, vapid platitudes, just really saying nothing at all. And a lot of recycling. So no like original new experiences here, just something that she wants to say that she thinks will sound good, which is really problematic in situations like this because, like I said, looking back on it, it holds no value. There's no significance to this speech at all. And now it's clear she did all of this just for show. She didn't follow through on any of these issues. It demonstrates her lack of understanding of the core of what her position was and what the royal family's positions are. To join in a long-term partnership with these organizations and communities, to continue to be involved to help achieve success over time. Speeches don't fix anything, but sticking with these organizations does fix things. To help keep them on track and notice when something needs support or guidance. Or, for example, what we see Catherine and William do all the time is bring in resources and connect people to it that have the skill sets needed to solve problems as they come, to bring people together and form teams to move these issues forward and build progress over time. And over years, you see the results, and it's wonderful, and it's something to be proud of, and a true partnership born of actual compassion. Meg's speeches are all the more vapid looking at them now. And despite the positive reception that they had, the extremely favorable press that they were getting, and these speeches in Meghan and Harry's words themselves that they have had such a great time, Harry was still allegedly furious over how Meghan was treated. Every single day of the South Africa tour was positive press. There were no negative stories in the press at all. It was as if there was some sort of embargo on any negative stories coming out during this time. And the way that they were handling the press and the tour itself was dubbed as new or innovative a lot of the times. One royal observer said that they were handling things in an American sort of fashion. It was a pretty organized tour, even though you weren't necessarily interacting with the principals. At the same time, we've got Tom Bradby from ITN having little conversations around the corners. So the press pack was kind of being held at arm's length because Harry and Meghan were giving exclusive interviews to Tom Bradby during the tour. And this was something new and different for a tour, but also not very smart. Because at the time, Harry and Meghan were representing the Queen, they were there on her behalf to do a royal tour. Official stuff here. So diplomacy is key, and the press has a right to report on these sorts of things because they were representing the monarch. So the press being sort of kept to the side while Bradby was getting exclusive access is not the right approach, and would be noticed as something kind of weird to be going on because they were there to report on something that was genuinely newsworthy. And the press noticed that they had no idea what was going on with Bradby and Harry, and observed that how he was generally on that trip, he wasn't like the Prince Harry that we've known before. He didn't really engage. He didn't really come and talk to us in the ways that he would have done. For Harry to see some media organizations represented on their tour of Southern Africa be the same publications that had spent much of the year, in his eyes, harassing his pregnant wife or writing ill of her, I think that's where they really struggled, said Omid Scobie. So he was trying to say that because some of the reporters who were there on the trip had written critical articles of Harry and Meghan surrounding the private jets and the birth of Archie, Harry was mad at these people, I guess is what Omid's trying to say. So Harry had every right to behave petulantly. I disagree completely. At this time, Harry and Meghan were working royals. They were spending taxpayer money on their security and their travel. And even if they paid for their flights themselves, they were still bringing along taxpayer-funded security. The public and the journalists were simply reporting on these things that Harry and Meghan were doing, and what Harry and Meghan were doing had grounds to be criticized. So it doesn't make sense what Omid's trying to say here as an excuse, but regardless, Robert Jobson says that he remembered we went to the township in Johannesburg, on the outskirts of Johannesburg, and he had a speech to give there. He was extremely furious with the whole media. He didn't want to look at the cameras, he didn't want to interact, and had even lashed out at one reporter. And this really doesn't make much sense, Harry's fury, especially at this time, because in real time, up until this point, the other drama that we're going to get to next in part 2 had not yet been revealed. So at this point, it would appear that the Meghan was being treated really, really well, and all of the press had been really positive. So everybody was confused what the problem was. Perhaps Meghan was being nasty to people and they were simply reacting to her, and then she was whining to Harry. It's a pattern we've seen her do many times. This was the most expensive tour of the 2019-2020 accounting reports, showing the flights alone cost £250,000. Furthermore, while on this trip, the Meg announced her lawsuit and Harry an attack on the press. Way to ruin a tour. And we're going to get into those announcements and their salty nature in part 2, but at this point, apart from the now obviously empty speeches and awkward moments and the mean-spirited "you weren't invited" comments, South Africa was also the source of other super dramatic dramas, like the Bradby interview that blew up in their privileged faces. And later, Meghan's exaggerated claims that there was a fire in Archie's room at the start of this trip. It's clear that Harry and Meghan wanted to make this tour their own. They wanted to do things differently, whether it was for the sake of headlines and attention or rebellion. What do you think their motivation was? But this was so much bigger than Harry and Meghan and their ideas and wanting to put their own stamp on things. At this time, it was about the monarchy. It was an official visit. Diplomacy is the priority here. And in their haste to try to make it special and different, they ended up making people uncomfortable and confused. Like in this scenario here, where Harry and Meghan were abandoning royal protocol. The pair have been warmly welcomed, but royal expert Katie Nicholl reveals in Vanity Fair that the Sussexes are confusing officials by abandoning royal protocol on the tour and requesting as little formality as possible. I have no idea how to speak to them, the secretary of the Bocap Civic and Ratepayers Association, Jackie Poking, told the Sunday Times. We haven't received any official brief on etiquette. I think that's because the Sussexes want to keep it informal, but I don't even know how to greet them. So people who simply wanted to know how to be respectful towards them were not being guided in the way they expected to, and thus it created a situation where people were kind of uncomfortable and didn't know what to do, and I'm sure made the whole entire scenario awkward. These are the sorts of ill-thought-out, short-sighted ideas that Harry and Meghan have been doing from the start, like around Archie's birth, around the flights, around this tour. Things that where they didn't expect consequences or didn't think through what could happen or what could go wrong here. It's always important to just follow protocol in situations like this because protocol has been there for a reason and developed and edited over time to become something that you can rely on to help situations like this. But what did you think of the South Africa trip up to this point, before all that drama broke out on the last day? Apart from a few annoying moments and bad outfits, it was undeniably a success. Please leave your first impressions from the trip in the comments below, and I'll see you in part 2 where we will discuss how Harold and the Meg completely destroyed this tour. And don't forget, it's followed up by a special fashion edition in part 3. So until then, I hope you have a happy day. Bye!